My Best Friends Live in the Woods. The Adventures of Albert by Anne Michelle Mracek. Chapter 39. Tree Fogs and Party Plans. I'm cold. Albert, dear, put another log on the fire. Mother Skunk was back in her overstuffed chair, her blanket pulled up over her lap. Thank goodness this rain held off till the beavers are back in their own home, she commented. Albert nodded. I don't know how we could have kept a fire going in this weather, he agreed. It's good to be back home, Mother Skunk smiled. Marigold, you did a splendid job of taking care of things while we were with Mrs. Beaver, Mother said. Oh, we all pitched in, Marigold said, but she was pleased with the recognition. I think I will need a week of sleep to recover, Mother Skunk sighed, pulling the blanket up under her chin. Do we have any chamomile for tea? Mother asked Marigold. Of course, I'll start a pot of water boiling, Marigold said as she filled the teapot from the bucket of stream water in the kitchen. Albert came over and sat on the floor in front of Mother's chair. He leaned back and rested his head on her knee. Mother stroked his head, a faint smile on her face. As they sat together, they listened to the crackling of the flames in the fireplace. One by one, the other children came and sat on the floor around her chair. Everyone had felt separation anxiety. It had been days since they were all together. The rain poured outside, and the kitchen window leaked where the frame didn't fit. Abigail got up and put a pot under the windowsill to catch the drips. Presently, the teapot whistled, and Marigold got down a bundle of dried chamomile flowers to steep. Tell us a story, Mama, Charlie asked, his big blue eyes gazing up at her. Marigold handed her mother a mug of hot tea. A story, huh? She said thoughtfully as she sipped her tea. Oh, this is nice, thank you, she smiled at Marigold. A story, well, let's see. Did I ever tell you about the teeny tiny tree frogs? She asked. All the children shook their heads. When I was a child, she began, my parents used to like to travel in the summer. We would pack a bag and start walking south. The forest would get thicker, and the hills would get taller till they were ancient low mountains worn down by centuries of rains. Like it's raining now? Charlie chimed in. Yes, dear, like it's raining now. She smiled at him, took a sip of her tea, and drifted back into the memory. We would camp out every night under the stars. Papa would build a kind of V-shaped support and stack logs up on both sides. He would light the fire in the center, and as the middle log would burn, the next one on both sides would roll down and keep the flame going. It would keep us warm all night. Mama had a bowl with a loop handle that she tied around her waist with a rope belt. She would boil water and cook all our meals in it. She would say, I just love camping out, and she sang to herself as she busied about fixing us breakfast. We would eat nettles and dandelion greens and daylily flowers. Is that why you love daylilies so much? Abigail interrupted. Yes, it is, Mother Skunk smiled. Did you eat gingerbread cookies? Charlie asked. Mother laughed. No, love, not on camping trips. What did you do when it rained? Daniel asked. Papa had a large cloth that had been soaked with oil. He would fold it in half and then tie the center on both sides to tree limbs. Then spread apart the sides, staking the ends to the ground. It made a cozy little tent. We would cuddle up inside and watch the rain fall. The pitter-patter of drops would put me to sleep. Was it soft and lulling? Rosie asked. No, actually, it was pretty loud. The tent cloth was almost like a drum, but I liked it. Mother Skunk sighed. We would walk and camp for days, she continued. We made the trip every year, so there were folks we knew along the way. We would have visitors that would sit with Mama and Papa at the campfire. They would laugh and talk and catch up on all the news till late. I always meant to stay up and listen, but I always fell asleep with my head on Mama's lap. Mother Skunk looked around at her children, captivated by her story, and smiled. That was a long time ago, she reflected. Where were you going? Molly asked. Where? Oh, to the lake. There was a huge lake, but it wasn't a big, round, open circle of water. It was shaped more like a fern leaf. It had many fingers that jutted out on both sides of its long, twisted center. It made hundreds of little coves and inlets to explore. Wow, Nicholas exclaimed. Does it really exist? He asked. Of course, Mother laughed. Can we go there? Nicholas asked excitedly. Mother shook her head. I was a small child, and now I'm afraid I couldn't find the way. She sipped her tea and took a deep breath. So, she continued, this one time we went earlier in spring than usual. It had been an early spring and the weather was unusually warm. Papa had built us a little cabin along the shore off to the side of one of the inlets. I always wondered how he found it each year. He would make whatever necessary repairs were needed. Sometimes the winter was hard on it, and we would sleep in the tent till it was ready. But this year had been mild, and the cabin was in good shape. Mama would make herself a broom and sweep it out, top to bottom, then unpack our bag and move in. It still wasn't much more than the tent, but Mama liked it and called it her vacation home when she talked to her friends back home. There was a worn path that led down to the water. Every morning we would walk down the path to go catch crawdads to cook for breakfast. I would always step off the path a short way to gather dried flowers and seed pods to make bouquets. I would decorate the cabin with them. She smiled as she thought. You said there were frogs, Charlie chimed in. I'm getting to that, Mother Skunk laughed. One morning, we were wakened early by a loud, shrill chirping sound. It was all around the cabin. What is it? Mama asked Papa, alarmed. Papa grabbed a large stick, prepared to defend us, and slowly opened the door to look outside. Then he burst into peals of laughter. This is great, he yelled. Come see. And Mama and I darted to the door to peer out from behind him. To our amazement, the ground was covered with a living blanket of the teeniest, tiniest tree frogs you could ever imagine. They were adorable, just like big frogs, perfectly formed in every way, but only as long as your thumbnail. There were more tree frogs than stars. They covered the ground and the tree trunks and even the cabin. As we stood staring, our mouths open in stunned amazement, 3 of them jumped through the open door and into the cabin. Papa quickly shut the door, and I darted after the tiny intruder to catch it. I was laughing so hard I could hardly control myself. I lunged this way and that until I finally had the little guy in my cupped hands. Mama had caught one too, but we never did find the third one. Mother was laughing as she told her story, and all the children giggled with delight, their minds full of the image of what she was painting. What did you do then? Ricky asked, leaning in, eyes wide. Well, we had to let the captured little frogs back outside And we still needed to go down to the lake to catch breakfast. So Papa said, I'll open the door on 3, and we will hurry out and close the door quick, so no more jump in. And then he counted 1, 2, 3, and we scurried out, and he closed the door behind us. It was like stepping into an enchanted forest. As I bent over to let my little captive go, the ground was literally covered with his cousins. I opened my hand and he jumped out. Once he had rejoined the group, I couldn't tell which one it was. What should we do? Mama asked Papa. We can't walk. We will step on them, she said, worried. Papa slowly shuffled his foot forward, dragging it along the ground, and teensy-tiny frogs jumped out of the way on both sides. We shuffled, he grinned. So we laughed and shuffled our feet, slowly making our way down the path to the lake. It was like parting the waves. We were making a wake of the tree frogs behind us. Mother laughed and patted her knees. Did this really happen? Jewel asked, eyes wide. Oh, yes, Mother laughed. It really happened. The tree frog invasion lasted about 3 days. Then, one morning, we woke up and it was quiet. We were all suddenly aware that the constant trilling had stopped. We looked at each other in wonder, and Papa opened the cabin door to look outside. The sea of frogs was gone. There were still a few here and there, but the living carpet had vanished. Wow, Jack said in amazement. I wish we could go see the tiny frogs, Larissa said dreamily. So do I, Mother Skunk smiled a far-off smile. We never saw them again. We went back a few more summers after that, but we never saw the teeny tiny tree frogs again. Mother Skunk sighed. It was enchanted, Jillian said, smiling. Yes, perhaps it was, Mother nodded. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the gray sky was still overcast, but brightening. Looks like it may clear up this afternoon, Mother Skunk said, standing up. Everybody, up and out! She clapped. The chatter started as they all stood. Grab a basket on your way out, Bluebell reminded them. Everyone bring back things for lunch, she instructed. That was a really nice story, Mama. Albert smiled at Mother Skunk. Thank you, he grinned. I'm off to see Mrs. Rabbit. Would you like to come with me? Mother Skunk asked Albert as she tied on her bonnet. She had taken to wearing it any time she went out visiting. I'd like to, but I told Benjamin I'd be here to help him explore the back rooms of the cave, Albert explained. Very well then. What about you, Layla? Mother asked, turning her attention. Sure, Layla said, grabbing a basket. Can I come too? Debbie asked. Of course, Mother smiled. Me too, Teresa said, grabbing a basket. Anyone else? Mother Skunk laughed. All right then, out we go, she said, leading the little group out into the damp air. Are we going to plan Bluebell's blessing party? Layla asked excitedly, her sisters nodding and looking at Mother. Why, yes, how did you know? She laughed. We just figured, Teresa grinned. We have been finger-weaving yarn for weeks, Debbie told Mother. We have quite a pile of woven tubes to add to her blanket, Layla added. It was kind of nice for Bluebell to be gone when Mrs. Beaver had the babies, Debbie added, grinning. Then we could work on it all day and not have to hide. All three sisters giggled happily with their secret. Well, I'm glad to hear you were busy with something constructive while we were gone. Mother Skunk laughed along with her daughters. When they arrived at Mrs. Rabbit's, she was in a rocking chair on her front porch, sipping a steaming cup of tea. "Good morning," Mother Skunk called to her. "I do believe this is the first time I have seen you relaxing," she teased. Mrs. Rabbit's nose twitched, a twinkle in her eye. "Oh, it rained," she said with a sweep of her hand as if to show the wet landscape. "Oh, I didn't have to water the garden," she smiled. "George, bring the other rocking chair over for Mother Skunk," Mrs. Rabbit instructed her son. "Oh, thank you." Mother Skunk lowered herself into the chair George placed on the porch next to his mother's. "Tea?" Mrs. Rabbit said, offering her a cup. "Of course," she grinned. So do they have a wedding date yet?" Mrs. Rabbit's whiskers twitched. "No, but I imagine it will be soon. Albert was expecting Benjamin to come over this afternoon to explore the cave. They are looking for adjoining rooms," Mother Skunk explained. "Oh, that will be nice for you," Mrs. Rabbit nodded. "When should we have the blessings party?" Mother Skunk asked. "Well, we need to give folks a chance to weave yarn," Mrs. Rabbit said as she sipped the tea and thought. Mother Skunk nodded. "We have been finger weaving for weeks," Layla joined the conversation. Debbie and Teresa had already run off with Gabby and George to play. "How very thoughtful," Mrs. Rabbit approved. "How about next full moon?" Layla offered. Both ladies looked at each other and grinned. "Perfect," Mrs. Rabbit said, and Mother Skunk clapped her hands. "How should we let folks know?" Mrs. Rabbit's expression was worried. "Oh, I'll just tell Clarissa and she can ask Al to sound the forest alarm," Mother Skunk said, quite matter-of-factly. Mrs. Rabbit smiled. "Yes, that's right. You have connections," she grinned. The conversation turned to details about what to serve and who to invite and where to have it. The cave was, of course, the logical choice, and everyone was the answer to who to invite. Layla got bored of the details of what to serve and scampered off to play with Gabby and her sisters. "Oh, I have to show you!" Mrs. Rabbit was beaming with her surprise. "I'll be right back," she said as she ducked into her house. She came back out holding a basket full of lovely purple ribbon. "I dyed these with last year's carrots," she said, presenting the basket with great enthusiasm. "Won't they be pretty woven into the blanket?" she exclaimed. Mother Skunk was truly moved. "Bluebell will be thrilled," she said, clapping her hands. "Thank you so much for thinking of her." Mrs. Rabbit smiled. You would do the same for Gabby." The ladies finished their tea, talking about where the new fiddle ferns were growing and about how Gabby let the pot boil over last night all over the kitchen floor, and they spent an hour mopping up sticky syrup. "You should have seen her face," Mrs. Rabbit was laughing. "The floor was so sticky that her back feet stuck to the floor, and when she tried to hop, she lost her balance and fell over sideways." Their peals of laughter drew the attention of the girls, and they scampered back from the game of hopscotch. Gabby always wanted to play hopscotch because she was the best at it. "What's so funny?" they asked. Mrs. Rabbit and Mother Skunk just snickered. "Oh, nothing," Mrs. Rabbit managed between giggles. "Well, thank you for the tea," Mother Skunk standing up to leave. "You will go talk to the Queen?" Mrs. Rabbit asked, her whiskers twitching. "Straight away," Mother Skunk smiled as she headed off toward the Great Glen. Layla, Debbie, and Teresa scampering about behind her. As they walked, the rumble of thunder rolled across the sky. A line of dark clouds seemed to be forming a line across the northern horizon. Then a louder boom of thunder made them jump, and Debbie yelled. "Let's go back," Mother Skunk said, stopping in her tracks. "The party announcement will have to wait." She turned toward home, walking at a fast clip. Then a flash of lightning lit the sky, and a breath later, the roll of thunder seemed to shake the ground. "Run!" Mother yelled. They reached the front door in peals of laughter, just as large drops began to splash around them. Mother took a moment to lift the wreath off the door and bring it inside. "No point in letting this get pelted," she said, setting the wreath on the floor near the basket pile. From the size of the pile, it seemed everyone must be home. "Is everyone back?" Mother Skunk asked as she took off her bonnet. Bluebell walked up holding a cup of tea and offered it to her mother. "Everyone except Albert and Benjamin," she said, worried. "They are still exploring the back of the cave." "Well, at least they're inside," Mother said, taking the tea she had offered. Just then, Albert and Benjamin burst in the front door, covered in mud. "We found it!" they yelled, all smiles and excitement. Mother and Bluebell stared at them in shock, then burst into laughter. They looked as if they'd had a fight with a mud puddle and lost. They were dripping dark brown spots all over the floor. "Go stand in the rain and wash off," Mother laughed. "Shoo, shoo, out with you." The two looked at each other and laughed as they stepped back into the downpour. "Wait till Bluebell sees it," Benjamin said as he scrubbed in the summer shower. When they stepped back inside, Bluebell handed them towels. "You will just love it," Benjamin told Bluebell. "Albert crawled through this little opening and then called for me to come in. Once you squeeze in, there's a beautiful large room." "We will dig out the opening for you first," Albert added, seeing Bluebell's doubtful expression. "Oh, of course," Benjamin said with enthusiasm. "We can start digging out the entrance as soon as the storm lets up." He was very anxious to get started. Bluebell gave him a hug. "I have news too," Mother Skunk smiled. "Mrs. Rabbit and I are having a blessings party for Bluebell next full moon. It will be held here and everyone is invited," she added. "But we can't agree on what to serve," she sighed. "Oh, how exciting!" Bluebell exclaimed, clapping her hands. "Well, if we have a date for the party, I think we should set a date for the wedding," Benjamin said to Bluebell.
Chapter 39, Tree Frogs and Party Plans. Discussion and questions. Past, present, and future. In our minds, we are often living in the past, replaying memories, or living in the future, planning and envisioning events. Truly being in the present moment is elusive. As Albert sits with Mother Skunk by the fire, they sit in silence and are truly present, still, and in the moment. I go outside, standing on my deck, and watch the sunrise to start my day. It's a calm and inner peace I choose to gift myself. Question 1. Do you make time to be still and be in the present to start your day? Mother Skunk tells a story from her childhood about a summer trip to the lake with her parents when they experienced a magical invasion of tiny tree frogs. This is actually a true story from my childhood. In my award-winning book, Unpacking the Attic, A Path to Healing Your Inner Child, I tell stories from my childhood with the intent to heal and forgive. Stories of overcoming traumatic injury to thrive. Stories of humor and inspiration. It's a gift to my grandchildren. I want them to know me, to know about my life. Unpacking the Attic is available on Amazon. The link is in the description below. Question 2. Does knowing about someone's past experiences help to understand them in the present? We see Benjamin and Albert planning a new home for Bluebell, and Mother Skunk and Mrs. Rabbit planning a blessings party. Both events are inspired by their vision of the future. They are all taking present action to make their vision of the future manifest into reality. Question 3. What is your vision of the future you wish to create? Question 4. What present steps are you taking to manifest your vision of the future into reality?
I am the composer and performer for all the music in this video. Both audio recordings and the printed scores are available on mybestfriendsliveinthe.woods.com. I will provide the link below. The painted illustrations are also my creation. Prints are available on mybestfriendsliveinthe.woods.com. This is a novel. The chapters are meant to be heard in the order in which they were written. And while each chapter can stand alone, they do build as new characters are introduced and past events are referred to. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. The chapters are numbered, so if you're just joining us, be sure to go back and watch from chapter 1.
In a dream.